Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the latest edition of the World Report. I'm Scott Crowfoot. On today's report, TransCanada requests suspension of the U.S. permit for the Keystone Pipeline. Germany is at the edge of anarchy or civil war as the migrant invasion intensifies. President Obama's latest gift to the country is releasing over 6,000 inmates from prisons to the streets of America. CNBC shows its liberal bias as the mainstream media tries to dump Trump and bump Carson. And our moment in history is a look back at America's immigration policy from someone who actually lived through it. Now to our top stories. The unpublicized meeting between Israel's Netanyahu and Russia's Vladimir Putin. Joining us with his in-depth perspective is the World Report senior analyst and economics blogger for USA Today Online, Maury Beschloss, who can be followed on Twitter at @mbeschloss. Maury, you have some very credible information regarding a meeting that really didn't have much fanfare when it happened between Israel's Benjamin Netanyahu and Vladimir Putin. Explain.
Yes, I had the good fortune of having a dear friend by the name of John Willem van der Herven, Dutchman, whose father was the legate in Queen Wilhelmina's court in Holland at the time that the Nazis attacked. He began to see what the Nazis were doing to the Jewish people in Holland. He became so furious about it that he really committed himself to saving whatever Jews he could. At the end of the war, he emigrated to Palestine and was there when Israel became a free state. He, as the head of the Christian Zionist Center of the Middle East, and he is very, very close to Bibi Netanyahu. He called me one night a couple months ago, first time, but then he called me again and gave me some fabulous information. He said he had dinner with Prime Minister Netanyahu, who told him about the 36-hour meeting he had with Vladimir Putin. And the meeting basically said, Vladimir said, look, I'm a friend of the Jewish people, and he is, by the way, his closest friend. Vladimir's closest friend, whatever you say against him, happens to be the chief rabbi of Moscow. He also knows that there's 1 million Jews in Israel who emigrated there when Gorbachev took over and opened the doors and let them get out. And consequently, he said, look, we're here in the Middle East for one reason. We cannot live with cheap oil, which the Saudis have forced onto this world. They will not cut back. So we have done it for our own survival. We cannot live with $40 oil. It's going to be at least 60 and hopefully 80.
So that's the main reason, you believe, for Vladimir Putin injecting himself and
Absolutely.
Russia into the Syrian crisis?
Yeah, just figure it out. His basic objective was to broaden Russia back into the old Soviet Union, which has nothing to do with the Middle East. You know, he had some people in Egypt, the Soviet Union, but they never really had any troops there or anything like that. Yes, that is exactly the reason.
So are they going to put the squeeze on Saudi Arabia?
Yes.
Is that the idea?
Yes. Let me finish the story. And what happened was that he said, I can tell you the Iranians will not harm one hair on your head because it's against our interest, and the Iranians will do what we tell them to do. They're our junior partners. Now, this is what
So they won't attack Israel, is what you're saying?
He said that here's the deal. They will not attack Israel because we're in charge. They're junior partners. On the other hand, we don't want you to attack Iran. First of all, it wouldn't do anything because they have all their nuclear works going underground, and they'll lie about everything anyway. He said that deal with Iran, he laughed about it. He said that was the most ridiculous. He said historically, this makes Munich look like a fair deal by comparison. So he said, you don't have anything to worry about because we're not going to let it happen. And they shook hands, and Netanyahu went home, and the idea was, let's not publicize it. The Iranians already know who's boss. And he said, we are in charge now not only of Iran, Iraq, Lebanon, but
Syria.
And Syria. And Syria gave us a second port. They had a port already in Latakia. And the second port was Tarsus. So Syria has given their two top seaports to Russia. The Tsar for years had wanted to have a warm seaport and never got it. Well, Vladimir got it for them, and he is now there because he said there's no way we can afford to have this cheap oil, and we're not going to go away because we got to protect ourselves. We had, and he went and he said, over 50 years we built the most intricate and exotic pipeline complex of anybody ever in the world. It's the cheapest way of transporting oil and natural gas, and Eastern Europe and to some extent Central Europe is dependent on it, but we're giving it away. At this $40 price, we're giving away, we're losing $1.
So how do they force the Saudis to play the game?
Well, he said, this is what we're going to do. We are now, I guess there's going to be a meeting of OPEC at which Russia has been invited as an observer. Okay?
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, that's happening. The Saudis are getting the message. They got two choices. They either go along and cut back. If they cut back 2 million barrels a day, this is going to mean about $10 more on the price of oil.
And as we speak, it's where? Somewhere around 46, 47?
As we speak today, it actually went up to the high 47s. And I think this has to do with another matter which we're going to discuss, and that is the XL oil pipeline owned by TransCanada, which yanked their application. And
we're going to get to that in the next section.
I know that, but I mean that also, putting that together with what Putin said to Netanyahu.
So where does Russia need oil to be profitable for them again?
Minimum of $60.
They'd like it back at 100, though.
No, they're realistic. They say if we can get it back to 80 in the first quarter of next year, I think we'll be okay. But right now, he admitted we're losing 10% of our budget every day.
Is 80? Is that a fair stake to look at?
Yeah. If I would make a projection, I would say the first quarter, I think we'll have no trouble getting it back to $60 a barrel. You know, that actually helps the United States too. We can't live on $40. We have cut back drilling rigs. We've cut back all kind of technical services. Smaller banks who loan money to the marginal producers are out of business. It's shrinking more and more every day.
Even Saudi Arabia would benefit from seeing $60 or $80 oil, wouldn't they?
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up because everybody thinks Saudi Arabia, because of the low cost of production, they have 5 gigantic oil fields. One of them is already dried up. They have gotten their costs very high because they pay off the Wahhabis, who are like ISIS in Saudi Arabia, but they get them out of the country by paying them off. They also have they're trying to develop refineries. They're just in the very early stages. They're spending huge amounts of money. For the first time since Saudi Arabia became a state, they now have a money problem. They have to borrow money. They've never done that before. I wouldn't hold out any teacups for them, but the point is that they are not in the same shape that they were in, where they could just...
So then why did they drive it down to $40? What was the benefit to them when they only have oil to sell?
Market share. They were deathly afraid of losing market share. And this goes back to when the market started going down because China wasn't buying. You know, everybody used China as a glorious dumping ground because China bought 1/3 of all the commodities of the world. Everybody thought that would go on forever. Well, without getting into the China situation now, they don't know which way they're going. Export, import, their consumer sector isn't going there. Their currency is all screwed up. Their stock market seems to go up one day, and China is in a state of confusion right now. So the point is that's not helping. So the point is that the Saudis are deathly afraid that with the fracking, the fracking is really what kicked it off.
But like you just said earlier, at $40 a barrel, fracking doesn't make economical sense for us anymore either.
No, it doesn't.
Nobody in the world is making money on oil at 40.
Ironically, it used to be the break-even used to be for fracking used to be somewhere around 70. It's now down to around 45. So they've really cut costs by going to the drilling rigs people and people like Halliburton and Schlumberger, who make.
And then an unforeseen offshoot of this is now ISIS can now sell their oil for $20 more per barrel.
But that's very marginal. You're right. I mean, ISIS is just a pain in the behind for everybody. But yes, they have captured a bunch of refineries, and First of all, I don't think they know how to run this stuff, but whatever they have, they can sell for $20.
And this goes back to a lot of, there's a lot of water that's been under the bridge from this point, but why didn't we take any of the Iraqi oil for liberating that country?
That's like saying, why is a stupid person stupid? This is, I don't like to come down hard on George W. Bush because he was a decent human being, probably the dumbest president we ever had in the White House. You're absolutely right. First of all, if we were going to go to war, we'd say, we'll take over. We'll take over the refineries. We'll take over the production. This will be ours. We'll pay ourselves off. At least George H.W. Bush, when he made the first shot against Iraq in Desert Storm, because of they had taken over Kuwait, he went out and got the thing financed with other countries. We didn't lose money on that. The 2003 invasion was all our deal. Nobody put a dime on that deal. We paid for it ourselves.
And didn't get a penny back.
Not only that, though, we actually opened the door to Iran to take over the Middle East when we did that.
And to ISIS and to everything else that's gone on there.
But Iran and Iraq fought an 8-year war in the 1980s, which...
to a relative standstill.
Yeah, but they killed 1 million of each other's people. And like Henry Kissinger said, it's a shame it wasn't like the 30-year war. That would have helped us much more.
Well, and having Saddam in there, hindsight is 20/20, but I think it's pretty much a given that most people that pay attention would say Saddam there versus Iran buffering them would have been a much better situation than us.
But that's true of Gaddafi in Libya, too. That's true of
Mubarak in
Anwar
Egypt.
Sadat in Egypt. You had all these
political
dictators.
blunders.
Look, let's say something politically incorrect. The Middle East is Islamists who need a strong dictator in order to make them see the light.
We need to step away for a brief moment. When we return, we'll have our economic and energy update, the global outlook, political insider, and much, much more. We get lots of questions and comments from viewers all over the world. Just email your question or video or comment to Maury@theworldreport.org, and you just might see yours featured right here. Remember to like us, recommend us, and leave